All right, welcome to Read Aloud. Very excited to introduce the new Read Aloud that we're going to be doing. Hopefully, a couple times a week, we'll be able to keep up with this book. It's a book that I have been looking forward to reading all year long. It's a book called Front Desk by Kelly Yang. I'm really excited about this book because I heard some really interesting things about it. And it is a fiction story, but it's based on the author Kelly Yang's life. She lived with her parents, kind of taking care of a motel when she was young. So I'm very interested to read this book, and maybe we'll find some time and we could see some interviews or something with the author. Okay. So our teaching point, what we want to make sure we're paying attention to as we read. So we're going to be paying attention to character traits, relationships, and the point of view of the narrator. We're also going to be looking for some possible themes, and then definitely any changes to the story elements. So over here, you're going to see kind of our lens, what we're going to be looking for as we read. All right, let's get started. Previewing the book. We can even start right now with just the cover of this. If you take a look here, you see it's a kid. She looks to be maybe about your age. She's on the phone. I see some keys in the background. There's a calendar. It's kind of telling me like it's kind of a desk, like you might see it like a small hotel. There's a little picture of something like a castle in the background. And some bags, and it looks like there's some papers over here. A tip jar, so maybe she's looking to get some tips as she's working. Looks like she's working at the front desk. Let's read the blurb. So the back of the book, it says, Mia Tang has lots of secrets. Number one, she lives in a motel, not a big house. Every day while her immigrant parents clean the rooms, 10-year-old Mia manages the front desk of the Cala Vista Motel and tends to its guests. Number two, her parents hide immigrants. And if the mean motel owner, Mr. Yao, finds out they've been letting them stay in the empty rooms for free, the Tangs will be doomed. Number three, she wants to be a writer. But how can she when her mom thinks that she should stick to math because English is not her first language? It will take all of Mia's courage, kindness, and hard work to get through this year. Will she be able to hold on to her job, help the immigrants and guests, escape Mr. Yao, and go for her dreams? Ooh, a lot to unpack there. So I'm already seeing characters. There's Mia Tang. We learned in the blurb that she's 10 years old. She manages the front desk of the motel, takes care of the guests, and the family lives at a motel. So that's a little unusual. I think a lot of us live in an apartment or a house. That's kind of unusual. Mia's parents, they're immigrants, and they clean the motel rooms. We also learned that there are some immigrants, other immigrants that are hidden by the Tangs at the motel. That kind of makes me think of maybe, I wonder if they're not, if they're undocumented. I know some of you might have that experience. You know some people that come to this country and they don't have papers. Mr. Yao, he owns the motel. He owns the motel, and he's kind of mean. We also learned the setting. It's the Cala Vista Motel. And a little bit about the plot here. So one thing that's going to have a conflict here is that the family is going to be in trouble if Mr. Yao finds out that they're hiding these immigrants. And another thing, that Mia, she wants to be a writer, but she thinks that her mom thinks that she should focus on math because English isn't her first language. So I feel like there's a bigger plot that kind of affects the whole family, and there's this maybe smaller plot about maybe Mia and her relationship with her mom and like her dreams for the future. All right, let's get reading. Before we do that, though, I have a possible character theory. I think Mia's responsible and caring because she's 10 years old and she does a job that an adult would usually do. When I've gone to a motel in the past, it's usually an adult. I don't think I've ever seen a kid working at a motel. And she wants to do her job and she wants to help the immigrants. So I kind of have this character theory that she's responsible and caring. I want to see if I can grow that theory as we read. All right, let's get going. Chapter 1. My parents told me that America would be this amazing place where we would get to live in a house with a dog, do whatever we want, and eat hamburgers till we were red in the face. So far, the only part that we've achieved is the hamburger part. But I was still holding out hope, and the hamburgers here are pretty good. The most incredible burger I've ever had was at the Houston Space Center last summer. We weren't planning on eating there. Everybody knows museum food is 50,000 times more expensive than outside food. But one whiff of the sizzling bacon as we passed by the cafe, and my knees wobbled. My parents must have heard the howls in my stomach because the next thing I knew, my mother was rummaging through her purse for coins. We only had enough money for one hamburger, so we had to share. But man, what a burger. It was a mile high with real bacon and mayonnaise and pickles. My mom likes to tease that I devoured the whole thing in one gulp, leaving the two of them with only a couple of crumbs. I'd like to think I gave them more than that. The other thing was that was great about the Space Center was the free air conditioning. We were living in our car that summer, which sounds like a lot of fun, but it actually wasn't because our car's AC was busted. So after the burger, my dad parked himself in front of the vent and stayed there the entire rest of the time. It was like he was trying to turn his fingers into popsicles. My mom and I bounced from exhibit to exhibit instead. I could barely keep up with her. She was an engineer back in China, so she loves math and rockets, and she oohed and ahed over this module and that module. I wish my cousin Shen could have been there. He loves rockets too. When we got to the photo booth, my mom's face lit up. The booth took a picture of you and made it look like you were in a real astronaut in space. I went first. I put my head where the cardboard cutout was and smiled when the guy said, "Cheese." When it was my mom's turn to take her photo, I thought it would be funny to jump into her shot. The result was a picture of her in an astronaut chute hovering over Earth and me standing right next to her in my flip-flops, doing bunny ears with my fingers. My mom's face crumpled when she saw her picture. She pleaded with the guy to let her take another one, but he said, "No can do. One picture per person." For a second, I thought she was going to cry. We still have the picture, but every time I look at it, I wish I could go back in time. If I could do it all over again, I would not photobomb my mom's picture, and I'd give her more of my burger. Not the whole thing, but definitely some more bites. All right, so this first section, it really seems like, if I'm building my character theory that Mia is carrying, she seems really thoughtful. It seems like at the end, she kind of realizes maybe she was a little bit greedy in how much she ate of that burger. And then she regrets that she photobombed her mom's picture because her mom kind of wanted her picture to be serious. And maybe that connects to her mom being an engineer. And her mom seemed like she was really excited. I also think it's interesting that Mia's family, it seems like the mom is pretty educated, right? She's an engineer. That's a college degree that requires a lot of time. And it doesn't seem like maybe that's what her parents are doing here in the United States because it says that they're living in their car. So I think if they're all sharing a hamburger, maybe they don't have a lot of money. All right, moving on. At the end of the summer, my dad got a job as an assistant fryer at a Chinese restaurant in California. That meant we didn't have to live in our car anymore and we could move into a small one-bedroom apartment. It also meant my dad brought home fried rice from work every day. But sometimes he'd also bring back big old blisters all up and down his arm. He said that they were just allergies, but I didn't think so. I think he got them from frying food all day long in the sizzling wok. My mom got a job in the front of the restaurant as a waitress. Everybody liked her, and she got great tips. And she even managed to convince the boss to let me go with her to the restaurant after school, since there was nobody to look after me. My mother's boss was a wrinkly, white-haired Chinese man who reeked of garlic and didn't believe in wasting anything. Not cooking oil, not toilet paper, and certainly not free labor. "You think you can handle waitressing, kid?" he asked me. "Yes, sir," I said. Excitement pulsed in my ear. My first job, I was determined not to let him down. There was just one problem. I was only 9 then and needed 2 hands just to hold one dish steady. The other waitresses managed 5 plates at a time. Some didn't even need hands. They could balance a plate on their shoulder. When the dinner rush came, I too loaded up my carrying tray with 5 dishes. Big mistake. As my small back gave in to the mountainous weight, all my dishes came crashing down. Hot soup splashed onto the customers, and fried prawns went flying across the restaurant. I was fired on the spot, and so was my mother. No amount of begging or promising to do the dishes for the next gazillion years would change the owner's mind. The whole way home, I fought tears in my eyes. Wow, that is crazy. So not only is she 9 years old and working a job where it seems like she's not getting paid, but then she makes one small mistake and her mom gets fired as well as her. Let's keep reading. Let's see what happens. I thought of my 3 cousins back home. None of them had ever gotten fired before. Like me, they were only children as well. In China, every child is an only child, ever since the government decided all families are allowed only one. Since none of us had siblings, we were our siblings. Leaving them was the hardest part about leaving China. So that's interesting. It seems like she has a really strong relationship with her cousins. And they're kind of like her, maybe brothers and sisters to her. I didn't want my mom to see me cry in the car, but eventually that night she heard me. And she came into my room and sat on my bed. Hey, it's okay, she said in Chinese, hugging me tight. It's not your fault. I wiped a tear from my cheek. Through the thin walls, I could hear the sounds of husbands and wives bickering and babies wailing from the neighboring apartments, each one as cramped as ours. Mom, I asked her, why did we come here? Why did we come to America? I repeated. My mother looked away and didn't say anything for a long time. A plane flew overhead and the picture frames on the walls shook. She looked in my eyes. Because it's freer here, she said. Finally, which didn't make any sense. Nothing was free in America. Everything was so expensive. But Mom, one day you'll understand, she said, kissing the top of my head. Now go to sleep. I drifted to sleep thinking about my cousins and missing them and hoping they were missing me back. So it seems like her mom has a reason for why they came to this country, that it's freer here, but it seems like maybe Mia doesn't really understand what that means. So I'm kind of wondering if you know what that means. Maybe keep that in mind as we read along. After my mother got fired from the restaurant, she got very serious about job hunting. She called it getting back on her horse. It was 1993, and she bought every Chinese newspaper she could find. So 1993, they didn't really have a lot of the internet there, just so you know, like we do today. This is kind of a while ago. So it seems like this story was maybe set in the past, about 25 or so years ago. She pored over the jobs section with a magnifying glass like a scientist, and that's when she came across an unusual listing. A man named Michael Yao had put an ad out in the Chinese newspaper looking for an experienced motel manager. The ad said that he owned a little motel in Anaheim, California, and he was looking for someone to run the place. The job came with free boarding, too. My mother jumped up and grabbed the phone. Our rent then cost almost all of my dad's salary. And who said things in America were free? To her surprise, Mr. Yao was equally enthusiastic. He didn't seem to mind that my parents weren't experienced and really liked the fact that they were a couple. 2 people for the price of 1, he joked in his thick Taiwanese accented Mandarin when he went over to his house the next day. So just so you know, this family is from China, and in China they have many different languages. They don't all speak Chinese. There's a lot of different languages, and so one of the main languages that they speak in China is Mandarin. And this particular guy is from a island called Taiwan, which is off the coast of China. So he kind of has an accent when he speaks Mandarin. My parents smiled nervously while I tried to stay as still as I could and not screw it up for them, like I'd screwed up my mother's restaurant job. We were sitting in the living room of Mr. Yao's house, or rather his mansion. I made myself look at the floor and not stare at the top of Mr. Yao's head, which was all shiny under the light, like it had been painted in egg white. The door opened and a boy about my age walked in. He had on a t-shirt that said, "I don't give a," and underneath of it, a picture of a rat and a donkey. I raised an eyebrow. "Jason," Mr. Yao said to the boy, "say hello." "Hi," Jason muttered. My parents smiled at Jason. "What grade are you in?" they asked him in Chinese. Jason replied in English. "I'm going into 5th grade." "Ah, same as Mia," my mom said. She smiled at Mr. Yao. "Your son's English is so good," she turned to me. "Hear that, Mia? No accent." My cheeks burned. I felt my tongue in my mouth like a limp lizard. "Of course he speaks good English. He was born here," Mr. Yao said. "He speaks native English." Native. I mouthed the word. I wonder if I worked really hard, would I also be able to speak native English one day? Or was that something completely off limits for me? I looked over at my mom, who was shaking her head. Jason disappeared off into his room, and Mr. Yao asked my parents if they had any questions. So this is an interesting interaction here with Mia and Jason. I'm kind of wondering about why it seems so important that, Jason speaks native English. I'm kind of wondering what the significance, what the meaning of that could be. I want to think about that as I continue on. Mr. Yao asked my parents if they had any questions. Just to make sure we could live at the motel for free, my mom asked. Yes, Mr. Yao said. And what about... My mom struggled to get the words out. She shook her head, embarrassed to say it. Will we get paid? Oh, right, payment, Mr. Yao said, like it hadn't dawned on him at all. How's $5 a customer? I glanced at my mom. I could tell that she was doing math in her head because she always got this dreamy smile on her face. 30 rooms at $5 a room, that's $150 a night, my mom said, her eyes widening. She looked at my dad. That's a lot of money. It was a humongous amount of money. We could buy hamburgers every day, one for each of us, and we wouldn't even have to share. When can you start? Mr. Yao asked. Tomorrow, my mom and dad blurted out at this exactly same time. Mr. Yao laughed. As my parents got up to shake his hands, Mr. Yao muttered, I have to warn you, it's not the nicest motel in the world. My parents nodded. I could tell it made no difference to them what the motel looked like. It could look like the inside of a Greyhound bus toilet for all we cared. At $150 a day plus free rent, we were in. So here at the end of chapter 1, it seems like Mia is a little bit upset that she ruined her mom's job, and that shows like she's caring, kind of building on that theory that we have. And then also this plot. It seems like they meet Mr. Yao, and already he seems like maybe he didn't want to pay the family. I'm already looking, because we already know from the blurb that he's kind of a mean guy, so I'm kind of like looking to see like, what's the evidence that he's mean. And it seems like this moment where the mom is like asking about getting paid, it seems like it didn't even occur to him. So that seems important. Also, I noticed that the jobs that the Tang seem to get seem like they maybe take advantage of the people. Like the restaurant expecting the 9-year-old to do the adult job for free and then firing the mom. And then the dad coming home with like some kind of like rash or something on his arm. That doesn't seem like a healthy thing to be happening to you in a job. Here's our question. Mia's parents seem like they made some difficult choices to come to America. Why do you think Mia is so supportive of her family's job? Make sure to use true details from the text to support your response. All right, friends, go ahead and answer the question from the Google form. Bye.